You good to go? Let's go. Rahim Mehtab, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's the new year. I thought we'll start it off with learning something about crypto, Web3 design, NFTs, and what am I missing? Metaverse. Something, all hot topics. And I have no idea about them, but I hear it's very lucrative. So, yes, please let us know about all these things. But before that, a quick insight on your journey.
Cool. No, thank you for having me. Super excited for this conversation. So my background is actually in forensic sciences. That's what I majored in. I did that for a bit, kind of stuck around in the science field as a lab tech. I kind of quit that, decided to follow my passion for photography, filmmaking, motion graphics, animation, so like the creative side of things. I did that for 4 years as a freelancer in Dubai, learned a lot, did like a lot of like cool work with like a lot of clients and stuff. And then last year, I kind of got into this whole Web3 NFT realm, which was like really, really booming and stuff. So in short, that's like kind of my journey. I kind of believe in being a generalist, and we'll talk about this a bit later and stuff. But yeah, that's like a very small introduction. Now what I do is I am like full-time into NFTs and Web3. Right. I am one of the co-founders for Arts Dao, a company that I'm building in this space. And yeah, that's what I do.
That's nice. Forensic science. A little bit more about what exactly it is.
Well, I mean, like, you know, like I'm sure a lot of people who watch like movies and TV shows are kind of bit familiar with like, you know, like how crime scene investigation and things work. Right. That's what I was into. I've always been like a science nerd in some capacity. Okay. It's a lot more practical than a lot of other sciences. There's a lot of critical and logical thinking that comes with it. So yeah, I did my bachelor's in it. I think forensic science is one of those fields that kind of expands into a lot of things. You can get into digital forensics. You can get into forensics engineering. There's like you know, like documentation experts and things like that. So yeah, it was a super interesting thing that I got into as my kickoff career and stuff. But yeah, that's about it.
And then you transition into creative and photography, videography.
Yeah, so I've always been kind of like a very creative person. Even when I was like younger, there was a point in my life where I wanted to be a choreographer because I was very much into dancing. Nice. This is when I was like 12, 13. Nice. And then in my high school and college, I used to play for a metal band. I was very much into like drumming, and like, you know, there was a part of my life that I wanted to do that. I used to like drum like 6 hours a day or something. Wow. So I've always kind of had like that creative aspect. I feel like I'm one of those people who has a very good balance of left brain and right brain, because I've been both. Like I like science, at the same time I'm a very creative person as well. Right. So I think there was a calling I always had to kind of embark on that passion. So yeah, like I used to do photography on the side when I was working as a lab analyst in a fragrance company. So on weekends, I would like reach out to people on Instagram, kind of like shoot them in like different places in Dubai. And then kind of when I started developing my skills, like I picked up everything from YouTube. And I've been like lucky enough to shoot for like a lot of like cool brands, a lot of cool projects. And the most fascinating thing is that I've done all of this because of YouTube. I learned, like, I think people don't realize how much education and knowledge that is there on YouTube. And yeah, that kind of like kickstarted me. Instagram obviously played a huge role in the creator economy in general. So yeah, that's kind of it.
That's nice. And just so that everybody gets a context, how old are you?
I am 29.
29. And you've achieved quite a bit in so many roles. You said you're right now a lot into NFTs and Web3. Can you tell us what is Web3?
Okay. So the internet had like 3 phases. You had your Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3.
And for the dummies who don't know.
Yes, I'm going to go through in a very, yeah. So Web 1 was your email and .com. So like all of your websites, literally like the beginning of the internet, right? Then came Web 2, which is YouTube, Facebook, you know, like all your like content creation, Netflix, e-commerce, all of this came into Web 2. So what we realized in Web 1, that the internet helps connect people globally on a very digital world. Web 2 kind of, what it did was it kind of organized and structured a lot of things that could be possible because of the internet.
Right.
So that's how Web 2 worked. The creator economy boomed, e-commerce, digital marketing, all came out of Web 2. Web 3 is supposed to be the next phase of the internet.
Okay.
And it's supposed to fix some fundamental problems we have with Web 2. So one of the biggest problems with Web 2 is, if you look at it in broad sense, the model of the internet, the business model of the internet is actually ad revenue, right? If you think about it, like whether it's YouTube, whether it's Instagram, Google Ads, Facebook, that's how all of these companies and brands make money. The problem with this model has been that, let's take, in order to understand this, let's take Instagram, for example. Instagram is $1 billion company. However, Instagram, it is what it is today because of its content creators, right? But Instagram never pays $1 to its content creators. So the only way that you make money off of Instagram is through sponsorships or partnerships. Or let's say if you are a content creator, a toothpaste company would come, let's say, put an ad on your content when I'm benefiting as a toothpaste brand, and Instagram is obviously benefiting, but you as a content creator are not getting any monetized revenue from the platform. And I think the model is a lot more skewed with Instagram than other platforms. Right. But that's a huge problem, because then you are, because the model of the internet is based on ad revenue, brands and products and companies, they don't pay you for your skill and creativity and your intellectual property. They pay you for your audience. And that's a broken model, because you're not being paid for your individuality or what you're good at. You're being monetized on because you have an audience. And I think that's where capitalism kind of like seeps into it. Where, like, I was giving an example of a toothpaste brand. Like, why would like a toothpaste brand ever collaborate, is putting ads on, let's say, a landscape photographer? That makes no sense and stuff. But the reason that's happening is the landscape photographer, let's say, has like 2 million followers. So this model is broken. So, and I'll talk about that, how we are fixing this. So there is this aspect we are trying to fix. The other aspect we are trying to do is get into the concept of decentralization. So the concept of decentralization, in very fundamental terms, is saying that instead of very few people having a lot of power, everyone should have a little bit amount of power. So we all control the system equally, without some people who are controlling systems, companies, products who kind of bulldoze everything. So, for example, if you're saying the decisions of Instagram should be made by a couple of people, of how the model pivots. Tomorrow, if Instagram comes out or YouTube comes out and they're like, oh, we are now a blogging platform, or we are changing our model and stuff and everything, they shouldn't get to decide it. The concept of decentralization is that throughout history, power and money has been the reason where people get exploited. You change businesses and companies, that all happen. So decentralization is a key component to giving people freedom and giving them the choice that if you are part of the system, that you should have some rights in the system by contributing to the system, right? And the reason I'm talking about this when it comes to like content creation. So, for example, let's say you build a brand for years to come on YouTube or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. Let's say one of these companies or brands go like bankrupt, like the app shuts down. MySpace used to be a big thing that kind of shut down. We've had like a lot of social media platforms. Let's say you've built your brand and your intellectual property on these platforms and they stop existing. What happens to you, right? So right now, when you upload a photograph on Instagram, it's uploaded on a centralized server of Instagram. When you upload something on let's say YouTube, it's uploaded on a centralized server of YouTube. So you are at the mercy of these platforms. What we are saying is, what decentralization is talking about, that all of the content that we put out should be put on a decentralized server where all these platforms are working as aggregators. So if Instagram wants to show you my photograph, it's taking from this decentralized platform and showing it to you. If YouTube wants to show my content, it's taking from this decentralized platform and showing it to you. Why is that important? If any of these platforms go bust, you don't lose your brand, your IP, your provenance. If you've been doing videos for 14 years and if YouTube shuts down, what happens to your brand, right? The other thing it does is when you upload something on YouTube, now you're bounded by the rules and regulations and the model of YouTube. So the YouTube has like a 45-55% revenue model for its creators. Let's say they change that to 60% tomorrow. You will not be able to do anything about it. You are at the mercy of their platform. They have no competition. So you are kind of at the mercy of them. Why this is important, that once your content is actually in a decentralized platform, then if tomorrow a competitor of YouTube comes and let's say is going, oh, instead of 45 and 55%, let's give the creators 75%, and I'm only going to take 25%. But you don't have to worry about, oh, should I post the content on YouTube or this new platform? Also, if you start on this new platform, you're kind of starting from scratch, right? Which you don't want to do. But let's say your brand and your IP, your provenance is actually on a decentralized server where these platforms act as aggregators. This gives you more power in terms of flexibility. More and more platforms are going to come, give creators better revenue models, better organizational structures. It'll actually improve the industry a lot because everyone's winning, right? I think that's what we are trying to fix with the concept of decentralization. So Web3 is kind of trying to fix a lot of models that existed in the previous phases of the internet and are kind of incentivizing that, what we are trying to do in a very short essence is we are trying to remove the middle person. That if you are a creator and I am the consumer of this creativity, that whatever money that you make, whatever revenue that you get out of this, if you want to make a living, it should be between us. This middle person shouldn't be taking 45%. They shouldn't be taking, traditional art galleries, they take 55%, 40% from their creators and stuff, which is absolutely crazy because they're not the one creating the art and stuff. So in very broad sense, decentralization, Web3, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, all what they're fighting for is instead of this middle person having a lot of power, that you and I, as part of the transaction, should be the ones who are having powers.
So am I right to assume that this technology, or to decentralize, is a part of blockchain technology?
Yes.
Okay. And yes, you did mention that sometimes the platforms have more power, like Spotify did with Joe Rogan.
Exactly.
And Joe Rogan is a very powerful person. So when that can happen to a personality like him and his years of effort into the podcast, which again, we are a big fan of, that was kind of like a shock. So how does this decentralization take place, Rahim? Because why would a company give the power to the people?
Okay, so there are two aspects for your question. How decentralization takes place is, let's talk about cryptocurrencies when we're talking about decentralization and blockchain. I think that's a very easy way to kind of understand this. Right now, what happens is when you and I have a transaction of money, let's say in a bank, the person that's validating this transaction is just the bank. Okay, the bank is controlled by a financial entity. The financial entity is controlled by the government, right? So you have different folds of how this whole institution works. So every time you and I, we have a transaction, the bank is making sure this transaction is happening. They keep a record. The record is going to the financial entities and governments for tax reasons or whatever. What decentralization is saying, that when you and I have a transaction, there will be 50 other people in the room who have a ledger, for that matter, a book, that they're going to see if this transaction actually happened. And all 50 people are going to make sure that all of this is legit. And that's how they will prove the transaction is happening and stuff. So it's not one person who's monitoring and authenticating if this transaction is real or not. You have a plethora of people from different parts of the world who are completely anonymous to each other. There are elements of randomization. I don't want to get into the jargon of it. That is making sure that this transaction that happened is legit, it's real, and it's public record. Everyone can see it. There's all transparency. There's nothing happening behind closed doors and stuff. Because you asked is why would institutions let you do that, right? This comes down to why we've been fighting for, what decentralization is fighting for. The concept is trying to annihilate how companies and governments and organizations have worked for years and years, and they are going to push back, and they are pushing back in around the world and stuff. Like imagine, everyone talks about how you always have conspiracy theories or like, a mismatch of data when it comes to voting systems around the world and stuff, right? Everyone knows, like in a lot of countries, there's a lot of like gray areas. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the world. Imagine everything was happening on the blockchain. Do you think these companies and organizations would be okay to put all of this on the blockchain and stuff? They're not for a very long time. And which is what we are fighting for the last, like cryptocurrencies are like not a new thing. Blockchain is not a new thing. It's been around for almost 10 years now. It's been a fight. It's gotten adopted to a very big degree in the last couple of years. There are countries that have recognized, for example, Bitcoin, which is one of the biggest cryptocurrencies, as like a legal tender in their country. There are countries like the UAE and other countries that are becoming more and more open to crypto and decentralization. So there's going to be a lot of pushback because obviously, I mean, like this is like a cliche thing to say, but people in power never want to give away their power, right?
Of course.
So there's going to be a lot of pushback. There is a lot of pushback. That is something I always say, that everyone who's part of decentralization right now, whether you're a consumer, whether you're a developer, whether you're doing something back end, you're building a protocol, that we are all kind of pioneering the future in some essence. And we all have a moral responsibility to kind of talk and educate people about it, because that's how we are going to grow. And the concept of decentralization can be taken in, you remember and we're not going to go into details obviously, but what was the essence of the Black Lives Movement? What people were saying is that there were some people who had too much power, right? That's essentially what they were saying and stuff and everything, to defund the police. There's too much power in a few people's hands and stuff. That's what decentralization has been saying for a while as well. So we are talking about this in different industries, in different nomenclature anyways, because we realize that, let's take dictatorship. Dictatorship is the same issue and stuff, that one person or a group of people are deciding what is right and what is wrong for a country or a city, whereas the country and city exists and runs because of its people. So shouldn't those people kind of have a say in how this whole system works? It's a very different way of looking at the world, or how we've done things forever, which is why just how we have problems exclusive to centralization, how, you could have one a power-driven crazy lunatic who's running something and kind of exploit people. As time will go by, I'm sure we'll find issues and problems that are exclusive to even decentralization. But it's still a better probability of doing things that instead of 2 people taking decision for 1,000 people, maybe if 300 people took decision, maybe we would get to a better consensus where there is a better debate and communication about what is right or what is wrong and stuff.
Can I just express, say for example, if that is the case, wouldn't too many cooks spoil the broth? Because it's not that I'm for or not for, it's just for me to understand. Imagine 300 people. Same thing, these are the struggles that big companies also have. When you need to have an approval, it goes through 7-8 heads, which again, it takes a lot of time. And you see, when you make certain decisions, be it a country, be it a company, it's always the essence of time. So when you have so many people part of that decision making, one, are they qualified? Because again, it's a randomizer, isn't it? Just so that I understand it properly.
Absolutely.
So how would we know that the decisions are made by the right kind of people?
That's a very good question. We talk about there's this concept, and I'm not going to go in detail, but it's interesting that you bring that up. They're called DAOs, and that's what I'm building as well. DAO,
okay. Decentralized
Autonomous Organization. It's a very utopian way of kind of running a company in a decentralized way. Mm-hmm. We are still learning. Because it's a very new concept, but it kind of works on the model of how companies would run, where everyone gets to decide and stuff. I just wanted to park that because it kind of brings into question what you were saying and stuff. So when you're saying that, a lot of times when you have approvals of 15 people, decisions take longer, or there's a lack of efficiency. Now, is the problem the structure, or is the problem having 15 people involved? I think that's something that we need to talk about, because a lot of times we say that this process is inefficient, but it's not that it's inefficient because there are 15 people involved in it. Is because of the structure that it has been made in. That I approve something, then you approve, then someone else approves and stuff.
Right.
But if we create how a consensus model works, how a blockchain model works, is that everyone gets to decide. So there are certain decisions even in our DAO that are done on the blockchain. Okay, there's a time limit on it, and everyone gets to vote on it and stuff. So there's a specific time. People come, and there's no hierarchy in it and stuff. If you have, and I'm not going to go into detail, some people have more votes, some people have less votes and stuff. But again, that depends how you structure it. In a decentralized way, everyone should be able to have as many votes as they want, backed by whether if they put in more money, they have a bigger stake in the company, things like that. But we can create a structure that makes all of this efficient and stuff. Now, the second part of your question was, how do you know if the right people are making the decision and stuff? This is definitely a big aspect of running a DAO or doing any decision making that involves a lot of people, because the concept of voting has the same issues in political systems. Then you have, let's say, even in DAOs, right? It's two things. It's exactly what you said. We don't know if the people who are voting have the right information to vote, and people might not end up showing up to vote, right? That's what happens in political systems as well and stuff. These two things exist, and we are still, because we are still in such an infancy that we are trying to figure out that instead of just stopping our future models that, okay, these systems don't work, or these voting systems don't work because of people are not educated, that instead of negating this idea, that what if we focused on building platforms or technologies where we actually make sure that people are educated, that we actually make sure people are incentivized to come and vote. The way the DAO system works is, so when you work even in like tech companies today, in startup tech companies, you are given equity in the company. You're given some sort of like stock or in the company that kind of incentivizes you to kind of work harder or look for the broader vision. That's why a lot of startup companies do that. Imagine that coupled with you voting as well, right? So now not only, and the reason why, at least in theory, this is a great way to run companies or see how the blockchain model works, is because now if I have equity in the company, right, and I'm also part of the decision making, I'm not just going to look out for myself. In companies, what happens is, oh, I want to outshine my other colleague, I want to outshine my boss or whatever and stuff. But when the success of your equity and your voting rights is going to be the success of the company, that in turn is going to bring you more money or name or whatever and stuff, then you all are kind of working on a broader vision and stuff. It's an interesting model to look at, because we are still in its infancy. And like I was mentioning earlier, just like how we have a lot of problems that are exclusive to centralized companies or centralized organization or financial institutions, we will have, and we are having a lot of issues in decentralization. But that's because we are trying to do something that has never been done in human history. And so, for example, like what Web 2 did is made people's lives easier, right? You can go on Amazon, you can click 3 buttons and you can buy something. You can click 2 buttons on Netflix and start watching like a movie or a TV show. What happens when you have a model that's made people's lives easier? That people have stopped educating themselves, right? I would rather get someone else to do the work, or or pay for a service to do the work without having me do the entire work and stuff, right? And that makes sense. There's so much to do. People can't be educated and stuff, and that's a big challenge, because we are in decentralization. We are actually saying that we want you. So when we are talking about crypto, we are saying in decentralization that you should be your own bank. You should be on your security. You should be your lawyer. You should do all these aspects. However, in a normal bank, if you have an issue, you can just call them and ask them to fix it and stuff, right? So in theory, you're like, why are we moving to this model? The problem is all these models are very easily, you can be exploited by them. And that is happening over and over again and stuff.
The centralized one?
The centralized one, you have like when there are like war zones or like countries that are going through conflict and stuff, like, your financial institutions shut down. You aren't able to extract money from these ecosystems. Let's say you and we do a transaction. Okay, let's say you live in Australia, I live in Dubai. We are doing a transaction in our currency. Why is our currency connected to the US dollar? Why is the value of our currency connected to the US dollar? And that tomorrow, if US decides to take certain decisions or whatever, good or bad, that if it affects our currency, why does it affect the amount of blood, sweat, and tears you and we've put into work? What we are saying, that the idea of cryptocurrency is, because we want to turn it into a decentralized manner, in the future, we don't want these financial institutions, we don't want governments, we don't want global affairs, we don't want pandemics to kind of affect currency. That is why we are building crypto.
Who's gonna keep the stability then? The value. How is that gonna happen?
It's by the general consensus. Value at the end of it is decided by people, right? If a group of people, let's take art for example. Where does the value of art come from? Art is one of the most safest asset classes. If you actually like look at data and stuff, they are the ones that get least affected by global affairs or pandemics or wars or anything like that and stuff. The value of art comes from a general consensus that, we've cumulatively decided art. It sounds a crazy concept because you're like, where is the substance coming from? What's the fundamental core of it? But it's actually about how that's how the barter system worked as well, right? Like we kind of decided that, okay, you do this for me, I do that for you. That's how we will work and stuff and everything. There was nothing backing it. We just came up with this system to kind of work for a global cause or whatever, like however the city or the community ran and stuff and everything. So that was a different way of looking at it. A lot of things in the world actually have speculative value if you think about it, right? Why is a Nike shoe worth more than a shoe you can get at like a supermarket, let's say, and stuff, right? That, okay, like after you can argue that, it has like engineering, it has like good footing or whatever and stuff and everything, but after a point, you're paying for the brand, right? For any brand and stuff, you're paying you can buy a shoe for 100 dirhams, you can buy it for 1,000 dirhams, you can buy it for 5,000 dirhams and stuff. It's serving the same purpose, but the speculative value is what gives it value. And so, yes, there are technologies that are working behind it, and yes, there are ideas and products behind it, but a lot of value in the world with a lot of IP, a lot of let's say like cartoons or Marvel characters or things like that are actually based on speculative value. The value of Bitcoin is essentially based on speculative value. It's a supply and demand thing. It happens with goods all the time. If you have more demand than supply, things go up in value, right? So I think it's a very different way of looking at the entire world. I always say this actually, that as a scientist, that the concept of decentralization is actually rewiring of how the human mind actually works, how our biology works. Because even in a pack of wolves, we always had one wolf that led the pack of wolves, right? And that's how centralization works. That's what centralization is and stuff. But the problem is that you can exploit centralization very easily. Regimes, countries have done it. We've seen it throughout human history. We've seen companies do it. And people who are in marginalized communities, they've faced the problems with centralization. I come from India. We've seen the issues with like centralization, when there was a reprinting of currency and like the pandemic kind of affected the entire world. So we've seen issues of centralization, and there are problems with it that we need to address. There are countries like Venezuela lost, or Turkey, for example, lost their currency value significantly. And of course, there are faults to it about what their country did or what conflicts they had, whether they managed it or not and stuff. But at the end of the day, why is the common man suffering about it? Why is the same person who was making a living out of being like, let's say, like a shopkeeper 2 years ago, who had like a great business, is all of a sudden struggling to have food on his table and stuff. These global events shouldn't decide my value or your value, or the value of my hard work and your hard work. That in broad essence is what blockchain is trying to fight. The reason I went more into not giving you definitions of crypto or what Web3 or what blockchain is I feel like this information is something you can find everywhere on the internet. But I think the bigger issue is that people don't realize why this is important. When people will realize why this is important, that's when they will get educated. You know, we were talking about in Web3 about these platforms, right? You could be like, oh, but it's a little far-fetched to think that YouTube is going to shut down or Instagram is going to shut down and stuff. And I'm going to give you an example. Flickr was a platform where people uploaded photos like many, many years ago. I don't remember the exact years. But it was one of the oldest platforms, online platforms, where people would upload photography. It got bought by a company where they gave like a very short period where they sent out an email to everyone that we are reducing you had unlimited storage on it. We are reducing our storage to X GB unless you pay for it. And if you don't pay for it, all of your data is going to get deleted. I personally know a couple of photographers who lost those photographs. Why? And this is like of course, like photographs have like sentimental value and stuff. But even in the broad essence, if you look at traditional art or the value of art, provenance, in the sense that the time and history something was created in, is super important. A certificate of authenticity says what? It says who the artist is, when and how it was created. The when aspect of it is very important, which is why a lot of historic art has value. So a lot of these people who had historic images on the internet kind of just vanished, right? With blockchain, we are saying that when you upload, and tomorrow, I think when people are going to put content on the internet, they're going to put all of this on the blockchain, because the blockchain stores our time on the blockchain that is going to exist forever and ever. That will prove this photograph was put on the internet at this time. And as years go by, if you're looking at it from a traditional art sense and stuff, that could hold value if it has like a cultural or like a movement to it and stuff. So that is what, like, in essence, Web3 is talking about. What crypto decentralization is giving more power to the common man. And there are issues with it. But they're not issues. There are issues with it because we've never even like decided to like critically think how can we solve this. We've had problems throughout human history with like science and like, you know, like environment or like technologies or medicine or whatever. We took time, we invested money, we had the brightest minds come together, and we came up with solutions. With decentralization, we are trying to undo things that have happened for like years and years, decades, in fact. It's going to take a lot of work. There are models that are broken. We all are working towards it. People who are in this space who are trying to fix it. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be problems that are exclusive to decentralization. I'm not denying that. But if you look at the fundamental principle, why is this important? If you speak to people who've been affected by centralization a lot, it's the people who are not very much into decentralization are people who haven't experienced the effects of centralization. If you go to countries that have crumbled under governments, under financial institutions, by centralization, you speak to them and they will tell you why decentralization makes sense.
So, Rahim, yes, absolutely. I agree with you. When people do not or do not face the things that centralized models do, they wouldn't really lean on decentralization. There are so many aspects where the banks give loans to many companies and the companies go bust, and then your hard-earned money that's there in the bank, you'll be like, you know what, we can't give you the entire amount. We can just limit it to so-and-so. So that definitely I wouldn't accept. The concept is amazing. I really like the way you explained it. Gives me more perspective on various things. And like you said, I don't believe that no, YouTube will not go bust. Anything can happen because you don't know how the workings are behind the scene. With that being said, I also wanted to bring out there are countries that are very open to accepting cryptocurrency. One of the schools in UAE, the gentleman who I think your podcast interviewed, his school accepts cryptocurrency, which is a good thing. But then there are also sides where I hear when a country says, no, you know what, we're gonna accept this one as a legal tender, and the value of cryptocurrency just tanked. That is a massive impact on the country as well. You have been very transparent. You've been telling that, you know, everything needs work. It needs more time. But then how would cryptocurrency and blockchain technology get the kind of support if they face such kind of negative impact?
No, that's a great question. Again, this kind of goes back to this idea that we are still kind of in a very early phase of this whole ecosystem we are building. Even in stock markets, even with why do stock markets like suddenly like tank? Like, let's say like a news comes out, okay, a positive or negative and stuff. What really makes the stock market go up and down is, again, there would be either big people with big pockets. They either end up selling a lot or they end up buying a lot and stuff. Those are the people who end up. So there's a centralized manner to it and stuff, right? Cryptocurrency as a concept is for decentralization. The fact that there are still so less people around the world who are in it, that still kind of makes it centralized.
And not necessarily buy and sell the stock, but also just move a couple of bottles away from the media. So yeah,
exactly.
Celebrities. So
yeah. So even exactly, and it's even with crypto right now, when like suddenly, for example, recently we had like a big crash because of a centralized exchange called FTX, where there was a big scandal around it, where the founder kind of mismanaged billions and billions of dollars. That was because the management of money still runs in a centralized way. Even with a lot of crypto, we still have these issues. And because we are in its infancy, if there are 100 people who are controlling 30% of the supply, that's an issue, right? That's why they have the power to dump or pump that particular coin and stuff. That's because, again, we are still in a very early phase of this whole crypto, blockchain, Web3, NFTs. And as years go by, like, you know, like the more it is spread, the more people around the world that will own it, the less volatile it will become.
So how do we solve the problem? Because the very few people know about what crypto and blockchain technology and Web3 is. I'm just coming to know about it right now, thanks to you. How do we work towards a solution? Is it awareness, or is it just buying the crypto?
Here's how I tell people how they should get. I think one of the easiest way to get educated, and this just this is obviously not financial advice. I'm not asking for people to go ahead and like buy crypto or things like that.
It's your opinion.
Yeah, it's my personal opinion that I feel like a lot of times you are more invested in an idea or technology or whatever once you kind of own a part of it, right? What I tell people is one of the easiest way to kind of like really get into this is buy, let's say, 100 dirhams worth of crypto. A very small amount. It could be less than that as well. The great thing about crypto is you can buy it for even like $10 or 10 dirhams or whatever. The reason I say that is I think people get very incentivized to study and educate themselves when they have a vested interest in it. So let's say if I buy something for 10 dirhams and suddenly I see it'll go up in 15 dirhams, or suddenly it goes down to 8 dirhams and stuff. Suddenly I'm like, okay, I need to see, like, this is awesome. Something went from 10 to like, let's say 12 dirhams. Let me educate myself about this. The reason I say people should start with a small amount, even if you have a bigger capital to deploy, is so that your focus are not the numbers. Because if you put a lot more money, you will always be worried about like, oh my God, I'm losing money or I'm gaining money. So this is how I say the general public should get educated. However, this is still like a very privileged way of kind of looking at it and stuff, because there are different folds to all of this, right? Like there are still people in the world who don't use the digital world at all. Like, you know, like we are still not paperless in the entire world, right? So this, obviously I'm talking on a very small privileged scales that I at least tell people personally. In a more broader sense, I think we need more and more education on this. There are blockchain institutions, even schools that are opening up around the world. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he's also building one in Dubai. And I think that's kind of, it's almost like, like what we are talking about is, imagine like learning coding, like, like your casual programming and stuff that build all of these apps that we use today. Imagine talking about that like 10, 15 years ago, right? That's essentially where we are. I think this is why I think the way I like to talk about blockchain or crypto or whatever, or this entire new world, is I kind of talk about it from why this is important rather than the definition. And I'm hoping that serves as a better educational tool for people to get interested in learning it. I think we're going to have a lot of pushback from institutions, from organizations, because again, like just how centralized models are how the rich get richer. That's how it is. This is why like a middle person makes a lot of money. So we are going to have a lot of pushback. But I'm hoping as time goes by, there are countries and cities and private institutions or government institutions start seeing the value in it. And Dubai is a very good example of it. Dubai is very pro Web3. It's very like our own city has a council that kind of like, our government has a council that's working on this whole ecosystem. And they're kind of working at it from a very user and builder point of view, rather than just coming up with a set of regulation and rules that kind of only benefits them and the country and the economy. They're not going about that. Dubai has always been a city about innovation and technology, and that's why they're kind of very open to it. And I'm hoping, in fact, Dubai is, I would say, one of the leading cities in the world in Web3. There are so many people I personally know who kind of move from around the world to Web3, from in Web3 to Dubai, knowing how well established the city is moving in that direction. So I think it's a very steep curve. It's going to take a lot of time, but I'm hoping as when bigger companies get involved in it. So Meta, Facebook, is putting billions and billions of dollars into Metaverse, into Web3. On Instagram right now, I don't believe everyone has the option yet, but you can upload NFTs on the blockchain. That kind of shows that this is minted on the blockchain is essentially putting something on the blockchain. Mm-hmm. You know how we mint money? Mm-hmm. The printing of money is called minting. So we say minting on the blockchain, but you can actually already have artworks that you can put on Instagram that are actually minted on the blockchain, and shows you a small symbol that says that, oh, this is minted on the blockchain. And I think because Facebook has like so many users, I think that's going to be one of the leading companies that brings people's eyes to decentralization or crypto or Web3. And I feel like just how the culture of the world works, even throughout history with like innovation of technology, it's all about, in fact, I would say in a scalable manner, even before education, the one catalyst that would be the best is a lot of these bigger institutions and companies getting into it, and that will kind of have like a spiraling effect on the masses.
Rahim, tell us more about NFTs, please.
Okay, so the concept of NFTs, I'm gonna explain it in a very generalized manner, yes, even if you're not an artist or whatever. Right now, NFTs are focused on art a lot. Mm-hmm.
When you say art, what kind of art?
Let's get to that. Let me explain to you what the fundamental idea of NFTs is. What we are trying to do is with NFTs is we are trying to tokenize everything. We are trying to turn things, at least right now, into assets in some capacity. What does that mean? Let's say you're a bank, okay? In the normal world, what happens is a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, they give you random offers. So let's say you're a bank, you give me like a voucher, like a spa voucher in like Ras Al Khaimah. Okay, you give it to me for 100 dirhams. You know how this is how brands and companies try to keep you as a customer. More often than not, these coupons are useless. They're too far, or it's just like not worth it or whatever. So let's say you as a bank gave me this voucher for 100 dirhams. Now I'm like, I'm going to discard this anyways. That's how I've done it for the last 10 years. But let's say a third person comes to me and says that I'm going to buy it from you for 80 dirhams. So what has happened now? You as a bank has won because you are still keeping me as a customer. I kind of won as a person because I made 80 dirhams out of it. The person bought the service, so they are happy. The spa provided the service, they are happy. So what is this? Win, 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 win. That's the fundamental idea of Web3. How this happened is we kind of basically turned that coupon into a token.
Okay.
Right now, in order to do this transaction, in order to do the sale, there are aspects of authentication that's a big issue. That how would this person know that the coupon they're buying from me is actually legit, right? And how can they make sure that I actually got it from you? Like there are issues with like making sure blockchain in its essence is all about transparency and authenticity. That's it. And that's what NFTs are. So this, in this scenario, if this is NFT, this has tokenized this whole system.
Yeah.
How this works in the art world is, instead of, let's say you make a piece of art, okay? Like in the traditional world, when you have a piece of art, it has a certificate of authenticity. That is the thing that brings value to that particular art piece. That's what an NFT is. So for example, right now, you can basically print out the Mona Lisa, put it in a nice frame, put it over here, but that's not the actual Mona Lisa. Where does the actual Mona Lisa, value of Mona Lisa comes from, is making sure that you have that certificate of authenticity that proves who made it and at what time in history it was made in and stuff. That's what NFTs are trying to do, is there is data on the blockchain that is saying who made it, when it was made, and whatever, like time and location and stuff. We put all of this stuff on the blockchain. So tomorrow when I am buying an artwork from you, I have a certificate of authenticity. But instead of it being just paper, it's actually on the blockchain. It's just digitizing that. In essence, what we are trying to do with NFTs is we are trying to come up with a way to kind of put things on non-financial things on the blockchain, and in some degree that they can turn into asset. They can turn into an asset class. That if you have something that I've bought from you and there is a demand for it, that there's a capacity for me to sell it more and stuff. But that's like a byproduct of supply and demand again. But that's what NFTs are in essence. We are trying to tokenize non-financial things to prove authenticity and transparency, that in turn would lead for it to become an asset. So for example, the definition of NFT is actually non-fungible token. So right now, let's say if you and I exchange 100 dirham note, I give you 100 dirham note, you give me 100 dirham note. That's a fungible asset. My 100 dirham is equal to your 100 dirham. Whereas non-fungible asset is, you know how you have 100 edition cars or 100 edition guitars or like comic books or shoes that are in supply. They have a number to it, right? And like, let's say the first edition has more value than the third edition and stuff. Or non-fungible is saying that the Mona Lisa, there's only one of the Mona Lisa. You can create it. Or, you know, with NFTs, because everything is on the internet, one of the questions that everyone talks about is, okay, you put this NFT and you're saying that this artwork is worth 10,000 dirhams. I can right-click save it and stuff. But again, that doesn't have that certificate of authenticity. And that's exactly the example I gave you. You can right-click save. You can print out a Mona Lisa and put it on your wall and get like a nice shiny frame, make a replica out of it. That replica doesn't have value because it doesn't have the certificate of authenticity. That's what we are trying to do with NFTs. Let's take another example. Let's take it in the gaming industry. So in the gaming industry, the only way, if you are really good at gaming, right? When we are saying we are trying to tokenize everything, we are trying to empower a lot of people. And what does that mean? Let's say you are a gamer. Esports is a real thing now, whether we like it or not. It wasn't a thing when I was growing up and stuff. It was more of a fun thing. Now it's become like, it's a sport. People put money in it. There are communities behind it. So let's say you are a gamer and you spend like 6 hours a day playing that game. And you're really good at it. Let's say you're really good at it. Shouldn't you be able to kind of monetize in some essence other than doing YouTube content out of it? Why is it only YouTube content? Let's go back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Yeah. The model of the internet is based on reach. That why do I have to be an extroverted person who has to get in front of a camera and be a gamer to make money out of this? Whereas when I'm very good at this game, but I can't make money off of it. I can make a living out of it. So how we can tokenize things in video games. So let's say I play 6 hours a day and I reach to a particular level where I get like a special gun. Now that I've got that gun through hard work and like work and stuff. Now the only way for people to make money off of it is kind of a not the most legal way, is where I sell my account to you. Right? And there is no way for companies and organizations to track that other than IP address, which is still a very flawed model to kind of really retrace things. That there is no way for companies to kind of omit that, but that's the only way I can make money out of it, right? What we are saying with the NFTs is, what if you're able to turn that gun into an NFT? And then, because there are, let's say, only 3 people in the world have been able to get that gun, now that gun becomes an asset. People pay millions and millions of dollars to buy game skins and guns and assets and things like that.
Billions of dollars.
Billions. Gaming industry, do you know the gaming industry is bigger than the movie industry and the music industry combined.
Wow.
Combined. And it's absolutely crazy. Like I feel like a lot of the general public is like so out of touch with it, because we don't hear in like media and stuff that you would never think like that's the scale of how big this industry is. But it's a very, very big industry. It's also a very competitive industry. Do you know the average, because it's such a booming industry right now, because it's very competitive, the average life's like a career span for someone working in the gaming industry is just 5 years, because the amount of pressure that is there, because there's so much money and everything is based on time. Right, the sooner that you're able to launch something, the better it is. Which is why, and there are like a lot of content out there. You can read articles and podcast sessions on how crazy the gaming industry is and how competitive it is. And because it has like a lot of money moving in, a lot of people who are interested in it, a lot of there are like a lot of people live in the digital worlds a lot more than people realize. A lot more than at least people from our generation realize and stuff. So in what we are saying with NFTs is, if esports is a thing that you want to do, why does it? So right now the way you make money is either through monetization, YouTube or Twitch, or you have an esports tournament, which is still, maybe you live in like a very remote city in a country, or you don't speak the language. How are you going to do that and stuff, right? What NFTs are trying to do is, there's this person named Kayvon who's the founder for a platform where you sell a lot of art for NFTs. He says that NFTs, so the internet removed geographic barriers. NFTs are going to remove economic barriers. What does that mean? In the traditional world, a lot of value of things came by fencing other people having access to it. So let's talk about it in a very creative circle. Let's take the first edition Batman comic, for example. The first edition Batman comic, it goes for like, let's say like $1 million. What would happen is, very likely, if I bought this comic, I would never open it. I would never read it. I would keep it in a glass case to not destroy it, because its value comes with the integrity of this
mint
comic.
Condition.
Exactly, right? What NFTs are saying, and listen to this, how revolutionary idea of this is. What NFTs are saying is, I could own this comic. The entire world could read it. The entire world could have access to it, but it will still hold value because I have the original copy.
Okay. And how is that possible?
So if in the digital world, right? So if I have this comic, then I'm saying that the entire world can read it. You can right click save it as well. But I'm the one who has it. So I have for me, it's an asset. But like all of you guys get to enjoy it. And isn't that beautiful? You know, when we are talking about it removes economic barriers, this I'm talking in terms of culture and art or whatever. Why shouldn't you have the opportunity to feel the emotion or embrace this culture just because you come from a particular socio-economic background? Right? And it's such a different way of looking at it, because it almost doesn't make sense. Because that's how we've lived life. We've like, I own this car. You can't break into it. You can't like break into a car and like enjoy this car and sit in this car and stuff. And that's where the value of my car comes in. That's the value of my watch or whatever these like luxurious privileged items come from and stuff. But what Web3 is saying completely the opposite. What we are saying is, and it's such a bizarre way of looking at it that I feel like people who are even into the space, including myself, don't even realize how grand it is. That there's so much more that's going to come out of this that we are not even like prepared for it.
Very interesting. Rahim, can you tell me more about how do we make that gun an NFT?
How do we...
Like the guy who plays for 6 hours a day, he gets this special gun after so many hours of... How does that become an NFT? How can he convert that into an NFT and be monetized for his efforts?
So right now, the gaming industry is still... in the NFT ecosystem, it's only now in the last 6 to 8 months, a lot of gaming industries have started talking about NFTs because people already buy in-game assets. People spend like thousands of dollars for buying a particular clothing or something in like these video games and stuff. It's only now we've started talking it. We call it game finance, because you're kind of turning this into assets and stuff. So it's only now we are working on technologies to how to build it, how to build infrastructures on it. So it's still in its infancy. In principle, what these gaming companies would be doing is they would be integrating blockchain on the back end. They can essentially create centralized servers for it as well. And I'm sure a lot of companies will start off that way, where what they will do is they're like, oh my God, this idea is insane. But instead of putting on a decentralized server, let's keep it on a centralized server because it will make sure that we always profit out of it. So, and to me, that's fine too, because that's a gradual change. We can't expect people to go from centralization and decentralization overnight. That's like the most out of touch point of view anyone can have, in my opinion. So I still think that's a good stepping stone, that you're like, okay, why don't we create this ecosystem where if I turn that gun, let's say, into a 1,000 dirham asset, and I go in this game, okay, let's talk about it in like very non-technical words, that I go in this game, I can go to the menu, I can turn this into, when I put it on a marketplace, it's for $1,000, and now you go and buy it for $1,000, and I obviously get the money, and there's a small fee that even this game can keep it and stuff and everything. So now they also have a revenue that's like a cycle of money that they can keep making and stuff. So now the more now let's say what happens is now you are a YouTuber. Now all of a sudden you made this video, and like this video went viral of you playing this game with this particular gun and stuff. Now what has happened? The value of a gun has increased.
Right.
You sell it for 10x the price and stuff.
Right.
So it's a big ecosystem that's being built right now. We are still in its early phases. I don't think people realize how important it is to be early. If you look at throughout human history, whether it's technology, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, whatever, everyone knows that whoever were early into the space had an advantage because they understood the system. They were one of the first ones to do it. And I feel like NFTs kind of are in that area, that people have the opportunity to kind of build a lot of things out of it that could help them build companies or content creation ideas or whatever they want to do into the future.
So Rahim, let's talk about NFTs, cryptos, Web3. Web3, let's keep it Web3 because Web3 I think covers all of it. In terms of investment, because after having a conversation with you and realizing that the potential that this can have, so how does one invest in this, and how safe is the investment when compared to investing in gold, in stock markets, investing in foreign exchange?
All right, I'm gonna start with like a small example story that kind of will be a good analogy to tell you, not analogy, like a story that will tell you why this is so much different to how the traditional world works. So let's take, so there's a particular project in the NFT space called the Bored Ape Yacht Club. It's basically, there are like 10,000 NFTs. They have like an artwork. It's almost like a collection of NFTs. Think of it like Marvel characters. Okay. They came out like last year. Anyone could buy them for a relatively like cheaper price. They're valued at a very high price right now. I'll tell you why am I talking about this right now. Let's say today I am a soft drink brand and I want to partner with Marvel and like get Spider-Man on their on the drink to do a campaign. What happens in the traditional world is that you get licensing rights. You pay Marvel millions of dollars. They would have like a very stringent process of how you're allowed to use it, in what direction you can use it. They will want to make sure like no color is being changed. Like they'll be very picky about all of these things. All that happens. Let's say you do the campaign. You put like billboards all around the city and stuff. Let's say the campaign goes to zero, which happens all the time. What has happened is you've lost that $1 million that you've put into licensing that Spider-Man. What happens in NFTs is that when you are, so there are like a lot of NFTs. When you own these NFTs, you own the commercial rights to them, which has never happened in human history. So right now you can't use, let's say, Mickey Mouse and create something out of it because you don't have commercial rights to it. In NFTs, a lot of times when you buy things, you have commercial rights to it. So let's say in the similar example, let's just go back to that example. Now let's say I take a Bored Ape, which is one of the most successful projects in this space, that instead of getting licensed for this Marvel, I get a Bored Ape. I get this Bored Ape, I put it on this can, I do this campaign all around the city, and let's say the same thing happens. The campaign goes to zero. What has happened is I haven't lost the money because I didn't buy rights. I bought the asset. So I actually own that Bored Ape. So the way this project is done, so the cheapest Bored Ape you can get right now is for around about like $85,000. That's the cheapest one you can get right now and stuff. And they were sold for like $300, $400, and anyone could buy it and stuff. And they're worth that much. Just to tell you, some of the brands that kind of own this, Adidas has a Bored Ape. They're kind of building an entire IP around it. A couple of days ago, it was on, they launched their fashion line with the Bored Ape, which is a cartoon character that was on Burj Khalifa actually. So like they're really going global with it and stuff. Eminem and Snoop Dogg have created like a music video out of it because they both own Bored Apes as well. Right. There are only 10,000 of these in the entire world, and there are people who've kind of own this. And the thing, there's a culture element to these NFTs that if they give you commercial rights, that you can build something out of it. Imagine owning Captain America and building something out of it, building your own game or building a theme park or a restaurant or whatever. What you're doing is you're celebrating culture, right? Of the comic books and like the entertainment world is all about culture. It's all about, which is why people in Comic-Con like to dress up as these characters. There's an element of fun, entertainment, being seen as that, speaking like that, talking like that. It's part of culture. And in NFTs, we are trying to take that very thing, culture, and kind of tokenize it. We always say, people who are into NFTs, they're saying that when you're buying assets as NFTs, you're actually, when you're collecting art or collecting NFTs, you're collecting culture. And this kind of goes into the investment side and stuff. So for example, the one thing I want to just make clear that this is not, I'm obviously not giving financial advice, and I'm not saying one thing is better than the other. There are different asset classes in the world, whether it's gold, whether it's stock, whether it's real estate, whatever it is. They all have their different risk and reward ratio. They have their own different thesis. The difference between, let's say, the stock world and NFTs is the stock world, let's say like startup stocks are very much the value of these stocks very much comes down to the product they're building or the technologies behind it. So there's a substantial, fundamental, tangible thing that kind of creates that value, right? In NFTs, a lot of value in NFTs comes straight up from supply and demand. It's a speculative value, and I would say I know a lot of people who are into the traditional financial systems would say that speculative value is not real value. And I get that argument. But like speculative value is a real thing. It's a real thing even if you're not able to put it on paper. And a good example of it is like Picasso paintings or Monet's work or Mona Lisa or Van Gogh's work and stuff. They've all been asset classes throughout history where people actually buy them, and they're actually the assets that are least affected by financial institutions. The least. Real estate gets affected, stock gets affected. So the thing with NFTs right now, because they're so early and they're still booming, there is very high risk, but there's high reward as well. But it's quite a lot more volatile than even crypto is and stuff. So it's still because we're still in its such infancy. There's a big learning curve. There's a lot of, we don't even have proper platforms or a lot of YouTube videos, for example, or anything that is properly getting educated. That is probably educating people. And part of the reason for that is, and I can say this as someone who's been an artist in the NFT space, who's been a creator in the NFT space, a collector as well, and now building a company, that this industry, because it's in its so early phases, it's evolving very fast. So it's very hard for someone to build education models or direction plans where things are changing every 3-4 weeks. It's almost like, imagine, we say that this is almost like building something in the internet, like at the birth of the internet and stuff, where every day is, it could just be one random person who comes up with an idea and someone funds it and they build something, and suddenly we're completely moving in a slightly different tangent than we did yesterday. So I feel like we are still so early. I would say there were only a handful of couple of million people around the world who are into NFTs. So there's still a very small percentage of people who are into it. I think NFTs still have a very high risk element to it. But you are seeing a lot of big companies and brands get into it, right? I mentioned that NFTs can become assets, but they don't necessarily have to be assets. At the core of it, blockchain is all about transparency and authenticity. And I feel like people should really hone on this idea. Starbucks is moving their loyalty program in the future on the blockchain. They've already started doing this and stuff. A lot of brands, Nike is getting into, like, they have a big project into the NFT space. They are very much getting into it. Adidas is getting into it. You have companies like Disney is getting into the blockchain world. There are like a lot of gaming companies. There are companies that are actually tokenizing real estate as well. So you're seeing where you buy an NFT, it's again a certificate of authenticity that represents a chunk of land or a chunk of a villa or whatever and stuff.
That's a real one.
A real one. So across the board, that we are seeing big companies. We have like Hermes and like Tiffany and Co. and Dolce & Gabbana. You have luxury companies coming into it. You have tech companies coming into it. Sony from the PlayStation side, they've started investing into it. Meta is obviously, Facebook is putting billions. They're putting not millions, billions of dollars into this whole metaverse and Web3 and like the future. So you are seeing across the board a lot of big companies and brands get into it. So it's gonna get a lot more streamlined. It's gonna get a lot less riskier. But it's something that here's my advice to people, that I feel like even if you're not, so right now the two ways people get into NFTs is either as an investor or as a creator. You either create NFTs or you sell NFTs, or you're building something in it. I would say that even if you don't fall in either of this categories, you don't have the money to invest, or you think it's too risky, or you're not an artist or a creator or whatever, what I would still say is just make sure that you're getting yourself educated into this space. This is almost, imagine digital marketing is such a big aspect of marketing today. I remember, because I used to do this before, I remember a lot of companies who were not even investing into Google ads or putting content online or putting videos online or whatever, because they thought then, oh, I'm a luxury brand, and the whole idea of us selling a luxury product is the experience you get out of it when you come to our store. They were against it, and suddenly they are shutting down shops because they focus so much on e-commerce and selling stuff through digitally. A lot of their marketing is digital. So I've seen throughout history, we've seen it's the same, a new technological shift comes in, a huge group of people are against it. They don't think it makes sense. This, imagine doing YouTube videos, trying to do YouTube videos for a living 10 years ago and stuff. How ridiculous it would sound if you're telling someone, I want to do YouTube for a living, right? So what I tell people is that regardless of what you're doing, just get educated into it. Because I believe in the future, regardless of whether you're working in the field of marketing, you're working in accounts, finance, law, whatever it is, that I feel like all these industries will start incorporating the concept of blockchain, because the concept of blockchain just relies on transparency and authenticity. Imagine philanthropy. One of the biggest issues we have in the world with philanthropy is we can never make sure that the money is actually going to the right people, or what, blockchain solves all of these issues. Imagine having your let's say, when we travel to other countries, when we need visas and stuff, you're authenticating documents, you're going to the education council, you're getting a certificate from the bank or whatever. What is all this doing is making sure that you are as authentic of a person as you're claiming to be, and that you don't have any criminal record or whatever. But what they're trying to do, in essence, is trying to just authenticate stuff. Right now, because all these companies and organizations have their own models. So let's say when you want to get your degree attested, they have their own platforms, they have their own structure. A banking system has their own structure to this thing. What we are saying is, why don't all of you guys work on a bigger structure which is not controlled by anyone, and kind of build an ecosystem where we can put at least some aspects of data transparently for everyone to see. And of course, I know this can go into the conversation of privacy and data and stuff, and that's a whole different conversation. But it would solve a lot of problems for a lot of people around the world. The amount of times people have lost opportunities because of a lot of these legalities and stuff. The other thing is, when you're creating a bank account today, you need KYC. You need to have a house. You need to prove this thing. What happens to people who don't have access to, people who are homeless? Like, how are you? And this goes into a different conversation. We'll probably not get into it, but because I used to be in like criminalistics and stuff, right? Like, we talk about that. How do you rehabilitate people who have been like into drugs or have done like crimes and that have served time or whatever, and they get back into society, but the systems and organization doesn't help them get back into society? How are they not supposed to turn towards crime again? If this person is homeless, they can't. Now you are saying this, the only way for this homeless person to turn their life around is to make some money, build from the ground up, hopefully get like a small time job, this and that and stuff. But they can't get any of this because you can't get a bank account, you don't have legal documents, and it's a whole vicious circle. And this is the problem with centralized systems and stuff. People who've been marginalized, who've been affected by these systems, will tell you why this makes sense and stuff, right? Sorry, I feel like I went in a different tangent, but I think when you're talking about NFTs, you are collecting culture. I think that's the biggest difference between stocks or real estate and this thing. I think culture is a lot more impactful and meaningful than people realize. It makes us who we are. It makes life what it is and stuff, like we are doing this, like podcast is a culture. People listen to podcasts like while driving to work or doing their chores and stuff. There's an element of education and entertainment. Culture is a very broad topic.
It's inclusive also, isn't it?
It's inclusive, and like it's a very broad topic because it includes everything. It includes education, it includes entertainment, it includes being part of something bigger, it includes being part of a community. You and we can sit and talk about like sports because we are both into sports. What is that? That's culture, right? And I feel like it's very interesting to be investing into culture. It's a very new form of investment. I think the idea of it being completely decoupled from government decisions or financial institutions is a lot more interesting of an idea to me in terms of investing and stuff. But I still say, like any financial advisor would tell you, to always diversify your investments. Obviously, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even if you go in stocks, you never buy just one stock and go all in, right? What I would say is I would encourage people to like really get educated in bigger companies, bigger brands that are getting into NFTs. Dubai Police has issued their own NFTs.
Okay.
Yeah. Dubai's government has a Dubai Metaverse Council, right? So when you're seeing a lot of these like proper brands, like Mercedes has their NFTs, Porsche is launching their NFTs. When you're seeing all these companies and big brands, I'm hoping that this adds a level of legitimacy to this technology and people can get more and more educated in it. One of the best ways right now to get into NFTs, everything in the NFT world happens on Twitter. Everything. Everyone who's buying, collecting, happens on Twitter and Discord. And Discord is like for people who don't know, it's like a platform. Imagine Slack. People use Slack at work all the time.
Right.
Discord is basically used to be a similar platform which used to be used a lot in the gaming world.
Okay.
And it's interesting that a lot of companies, a lot of brands, Adidas has their own Discord now. It's
Okay.
yeah. Because they know the Web3 culture is on Twitter. It's not on Instagram yet. It's only starting to come on Instagram yet. But crypto has always been on like Twitter a lot, even like for years and years. Crypto Twitter, that's what they call it, CT. CT has been like a real thing for a very long time and stuff. Right. That's where a lot of the discussions happen. So right now, one of the best ways to get educated on NFTs is you find a lot of cool podcasts and a lot of videos on YouTube for education purposes, for discussions and like really finding projects or like investment strategies or learning from people. Go on Twitter. Get on NFT Twitter, and like you meet some of the coolest people in the world.
What is Metaverse?
So the concept of Metaverse is us almost living in a digital reality. And in some capacity, we are kind of already been living in it without knowing that we are living in it. Let's take Zoom calls, for example. I remember I attended a very close friend of mine's wedding on Zoom during the pandemic and stuff. And I was tearing up when he was getting married. And I was like, it literally, like, for a second, I kind of tapped out of that moment. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy that I'm feeling this emotion without even being there. I'm seeing this, like me and him, we are interacting through this technology. We're not physically present there, but we are able to feel emotion and stuff. And that's what the fundamental concept of Metaverse is. Right now, in its very infancy, we are like in super, super, super early stages and stuff. However, a very good way of thinking is like what we are talking about, that imagine 10, 20, 30 years later down the line, that you and I are able to hug in a digital world and we can feel the effects of it in the physical world.
Is that possible?
I mean, that's what Metaverse is trying to do, as what VR and AR is, kind of immerse us with technology where we live in digital worlds. This is not possible right now.
No.
But this is
in future,
but this is what we are working towards. We are working towards where we live in digital realities. There's a very good movie, and I recommend everyone should watch it. It's called Ready Player One. If you haven't, it's a great movie. It's a Hollywood movie, science fiction, but the whole movie is about them living in a digital reality. And I think that's a very good way to kind of see the nuances of how people would live, or how this whole world will exist and stuff. Like when we are talking about augmented reality and virtual reality and stuff, there are like, it's a very stepping stone for what the metaverse is supposed to be and stuff, right? Like imagine, so there's a hot topic that people are talking in the space right now. It's called digital fashion. And digital fashion is, imagine, there are different ways of looking at it. There are different ideas that people are building on it. But imagine this. Imagine you wear a white shirt out there, okay? And let's say like all of us have like a VR headset that everyone walks around with, or like normal spectacles that have like VR technology and stuff and everything. And that day you basically press a button that shows a different print on your shirt that actually happens in people's glasses digitally and stuff. So everyone is seeing, let's say, like an artwork on your shirt and stuff, but it's a plain shirt. And tomorrow it's the same shirt that you can wear it, but you can change that. Right? If you look at digital fashion, it's super cool because we're talking about how you can change it through a digital way and stuff. That's a very stepping stone of looking at how virtual realities, augmented realities would look like in the future. And then it would move into more and more into living in digital worlds. Like imagine going on Sheikh Zayed Road, wearing a pair of glasses, and instead of billboards and stuff, you could see these ads and like neon signs or whatever and stuff that don't exist physically, but exist digitally, where they exist in your reality, but they don't physically exist and stuff and everything. And what would happen is over time, because wearing glasses or whatever would become like a part of you and stuff, you would not even realize, your brain chemistry would not even realize that this isn't real, that you're seeing something. You know, when we watch movies, we cry, we laugh, we feel, we get like goosebumps and stuff and everything. We are feeling this. The reason I'm saying this, a lot of people talk about that, and I do believe I'm an extroverted person. I love meeting people and stuff. But one of the arguments that people always give me about the metaverse is that, but meeting people in real life is something else.
It is. I was going to go there.
Exactly. And it is. And that's what we are working towards. We are working towards, like, I'm talking like 30, 40, maybe you and I will not be alive for the actual level of what people who are building metaverses in the spaces are looking for. But imagine living in a world where you and I could be countries apart. And like, let's say I'm getting married and stuff, and you want to give me a hug and congratulate me, but you can't be there physically. But we build a technology where I'm able to feel that warmth and that love digitally. Wouldn't that be beautiful?
Yes, and it wouldn't be real as well. In not that aspect, but so many other things. Like, what happens is, Rahim, we are social animals. So by wearing the glasses and the brain not recognizing that that's not reality, it's like living in the Matrix or in the Avatar, or like you said, Ready Player One. It's not going to be real.
It's not going to be real only in the initial phase. I'm talking about to a point where your brain can tell if it's real or not. And this goes into a different conversation of consciousness or whatever. Like, what is real? Like, at what point the brain deems something real or not? And I will probably link you a study. There's a study done, for example. I watched this documentary. Maybe a lot of people have seen it. It's called The Secret Law of Attraction. There's this whole, there's an experiment they do in it where they talk about that they put this athlete on a treadmill. They put headphones, they put fans. They basically try to create parameters that makes him feel that he's running on an actual track and stuff. It takes a lot of time, but after a time, when they've created enough parameters, there comes a point in the experiment where the same muscles in his head are firing up that fire up when he's running on a track and stuff. And then they kind of do the experiment where he's not even running on the treadmill anymore. Right. But he gets in his head for so long that his head is unable to, the muscles that are supposed to connect from his synapses aren't able to tell whether this is real or not, because our imagination is a lot more expansive and a lot more detailed than we think it is and stuff. So what you're talking about is the transition stage.
And the ethical aspect as well.
The ethical conversation is a whole different conversation and stuff. Yes. And like, one of the things I always say, and I don't want anyone to take anything I say as like, like this is going to be the future and this is good or bad and stuff. Just like everything in life, you have problems that are exclusive to something in real life. There are problems that we might have that will be exclusive to this new technology that we don't even know. We're talking about ethical issues. We're talking about this, but they say that, right? You don't know what you don't know. That's so we might have, and we don't know that and stuff. So only time will tell. But it's this, in this transition stage, we are talking about that. Oh, it's not real, but our brains will know it's not real. It's actually not physical. But I'm talking about like going even further down the line, where you're not able to differentiate, what is real and what is not. And that sounds like a scary thought as well and stuff. So obviously, like there is like an ethical responsibility to build things properly, and that's a whole different conversation, I guess, with even AI or robots or whatever and stuff. But there are, if you look at like a lot of the younger kids, they live a lot more digitally than like even we did and stuff, right? A lot of people, the kids play this game called Roblox. I think it's called Roblox, and Minecraft and all of this. And they live in like this realities where they meet each other and they meet their characters, and my character meets your character and stuff. And it's so crazy to see how much they enjoy that. And this is so funny. I have a friend of mine who has, his son plays Minecraft. There was an NFT project that released that had the concept of Minecraft, but in the NFT space and stuff. His 9-year-old kid asked him to buy it because he thought this is a very valuable thing and stuff. He didn't buy it because he was like, it just doesn't make sense. So the father was like, this doesn't make sense and stuff. When his kid asked him to buy it, it was for $300. And stuff. He was like, he didn't ask him to buy it. He was like, Dad, like, this is nice. You should get it. Like, he obviously didn't say it from a investment point of view and stuff. He didn't like take his like kid seriously and stuff. That same thing that was worth $300 ended up being worth $20,000 like 2 months later and stuff. And we always talk about this. Like, I feel like as adults, we should like really talk to kids and like really give them the credibility and understand that what do they see the future to be? What do they think how the future is going to be like and stuff? Are they, and I can bet you, and obviously I'm not basing this on any study or whatever and stuff, but I can bet you that their idea of living in a digital world will have more pros to it than maybe even you and I would have, and the generations that are older to us would have like even lesser. And as time goes by, these people, they would want to live in like a lot more digital worlds and stuff. And it's one of those things that maybe like, you know, like maybe we are not able to see the world through their eyes, or what it's easy for us to say what is right or what is wrong. Like, you know, like this is benefit, like, you know, this is beneficial, or meeting people in real life is good or not and stuff. But this is also one of those things, maybe, you know, how sometimes we have a conversations with our parents where like, they're like, oh, I don't understand. What is this new culture or new technology you're doing and stuff? Maybe we are reaching to that. I always tell myself, I think as a scientist, I always like to be very critical about my thinking. I'm always like, what if I'm not able to see the world through this other person's point of view, which conflicts to how I believe life should be, is because I'm consciously, my brain is not wired to see it. It's not that I'm not smart enough. It's just that my brain is not wired to, and I think a lot of people should have that conversation in their head and stuff, that see how the younger generation is living the world, see what their vision of the future is. And I can bet you a lot of them would talk about living in digital realities, even though it sounds absolutely bizarre to us and stuff.
It sounds that way. It's not that I'm against the idea. Because like you said, the youth these days, the generations after us and counting, in certain ways, they're so much better than us. They are more inclusive. They are more concerned for their neighbors, their friends. Not necessarily worldwide, but it's slowly happening with the internet and the information that's going on, which is a good thing. At the same time, because the information is so digital, you can always change the information. You can say, okay, okay, today we say that this is X, and all the search engines will say the same, and then you want to manipulate that. There's always there are always two sides. So as long as the ethical balance is maintained, I think yes, it could be. But at the same time, nothing can beat physical. I mean, that's my opinion. I'm not saying no, that's the only thing. There are so many ways that maybe a person is missing somebody else, and the person's no more. But you can create a virtual reality, and then the mind can't really tell, and you get certain closure that the person would want. That is a major plus. But at the same time, are we lying to that person? So there are so many questions in that, and like you said, there's a completely this, but it's fascinating as in so many ways, in so many I can see so many positives. At the same time, I'm a bit concerned because like you mentioned rightly, there are some things that don't sit with me because I'm not wired that way. As one grows older, you are very less. I mean, I am very less open to change, although I'd like to believe that I'm open. Change is something which will take some time for me. But then again, very interesting concept, because I would wanted to know what Metaverse was. So thank you so much. So has any financial companies moved to blockchain technology? Banks or maybe exchange houses?
So there are countries and cities and financial institutions pivoting into it as the time goes by. And the reason for that is, and you take anywhere, like, okay, Dubai is definitely very pro it. But even if you look at places that were very not pro it, let's take India, for example. India has like a 30% tax on crypto right now. But they ended up putting that tax is because they know this is not going anywhere. What happens with any technology or whatever, or any change for that matter, right, is that you, even if it doesn't make sense to you, when you see from a capitalistic point of view, even if this thing doesn't make sense to you, but you know everyone else is doing it, then you're like, okay, maybe we should incorporate this for the PR of our organization, for coming off as like, like the innovative country or city and stuff and everything. And kind of like, maybe if this is how the world is going to work, we might as well, if you can't beat them, join them, sort of thing, right? So you have El Salvador is they've kind of recognized it as a legal tender. Their own president has like collected a lot of Bitcoin for the country, for the country's economy and stuff. So he's doing a lot of that. Dubai Dubai has like a regulatory authority called VARA. So it's called Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. They are kind of integrating a lot of blockchain technologies in financial institutions, in a lot of government entities and stuff. There are companies and organizations that are still working towards. To my knowledge, I don't think there's a financial institution that's completely a traditional financial institution that has completely converted or have completely started incorporating it. But like everyone is kind of like, take Dubai, for example. In Dubai, technically you can't open companies, you can't open bank accounts and things like that until you're approved by the government and stuff and everything. So when you're doing fiat exchanges, when you put real life dirhams and convert them to crypto, they are essentially going from your bank and stuff. A couple of years ago, this used to get flagged. This used to get flagged from Dubai banks or like the exchanges that you be using internationally, because Dubai didn't have exchanges. Dubai has a couple of crypto exchanges. BitOasis is one of them, one of the most famous one. It's recognized by government authorities, banks recognize it. So you don't have those issues right now. My guess would be a lot of these companies and organizations and institutions will start implementing this a lot more earlier than they would publicly announce it.
Right.
And I think that happens a lot of times with change, because a lot of times public's reaction is not based on rationality. It's based on how we are as humans. Like, it goes back to what you were saying, right? It's hard to change. It's in our biology. It's not even a personality thing and stuff and everything. We have flight or fight responses in our body and stuff. When we don't recognize certain parameters, if they don't fit in the framework of our mind, we consider them as a threat and stuff, right? So I feel like and that's how a lot of, like, even, for example, like something small as like, even the rules started relaxing and throughout the world with like masks and stuff in the pandemic, before a lot of countries and cities actually announced that, oh, no more masks and stuff. And they do that because you kind of want to like take people slowly. So you don't want to jar people, because then you kind of suddenly shake people and stuff, right? So I feel like a lot of organizations, financial institutions are going to start implementing, or probably are implementing and trying and testing. And like I was saying, that there are not a lot of case studies for a lot of things. So that maybe they are educating themselves by building it, right? We have, my company has a DAO. I always talk about what we are trying to do with the way the DAO model works is these don't exist in the world. A lot of them don't exist in the world. So there are not proper case studies that I can look at, like 10 DAOs, and be like, oh, all of this were successful. We will be successful. In essence, what we are kind of building is going to be a case study of whether this fails or doesn't fail. Right. And stuff. So we are still in a very, very early stage with it, but there are institutions and stuff that are still working to build the framework.
Right. Who is the real Rahim Mehtab?
And
have you made a lot of money in the space of Web3?
Rahim Mehtab is a person who loves art and culture. I am very interested in people who are seeing the future of tomorrow. I believe in financial independency. And these are just like my personal ethos and stuff. Even when I was working as a freelance photographer, creative, in the creative field, the reason I ended up switching to it was that I didn't want to work for someone, but it had nothing to do with like egoistic reasons. It wasn't like, oh, I don't like being bossed around or this thing. I think it had more to do with, I think there are certain values that I put above money or about my work, above work and stuff, and I should get to decide that, and everyone else should get to decide that I'm not gonna be rude to someone because I need to make money out of them, or I need to get this client, that's not me, and I don't want to do that. And unfortunately, and I'm not saying this, it's a part of the business world, it's part of the corporate structure world and stuff, that if you are not a bit strict with me and not with like a bit more bossy to me and stuff and everything, your boss will get mad at you and stuff, right? So I think there's a hierarchical structure to it and stuff. That's something that I personally don't like. I don't accept it and stuff, which is why like there were times where I would give up photography gigs that were even paying me a lot, but if I didn't vibe with the people, I was privileged enough to obviously say no, so I'm going to put that element out there, but I would not do it because I was like this is not me. This is not why I do it. And the day I rejected one of my first clients, that was one of my favorite days in my life. I remember it very clearly because I was like, this is why I took freelance.
Right.
So I'm kind of that. I've been very much about. I believe in like building like friendships and relationships. I'm a lot into cinema, creativity. I love playing music. I do improv theater. So I'm a very creative person, and I feel like the idea of collecting culture, which is collecting like as in like in the art world, you have art collectors, right? That's how everyone speaks in the NFT world. So I feel like I like to collect culture, which is why like the whole NFT world is very fascinating to me, and I'm trying to bring that to other people. And the reason for that is, one of the reasons I love to talk about this is because I came into this space. A lot of people think that if you want to get into crypto or NFTs, that you need to come with millions, thousands of dollars to turn them into millions of dollars and stuff. And whilst that may be the case, but you still have opportunities that come that are they have a very low entry, or sometimes are absolutely free for you to get into, that could end up resulting in you making a lot of money and stuff. When I got into NFTs last year, which was in February, literally 2 or 3 months before that, I was struggling to have a plan of how I'm going to pay rent the next year. But and I wanted to reiterate that a lot, because we have this thing in society, right? The rich get richer. And yes. But it's not always the case. And the reason I know it's the case a lot of times, but it's not always the case. And the reason I'm telling people this, and especially like younger people, is that I want you to keep your eyes and ears open for the opportunities that come into this space. When I came into the space as an artist, so I have a very interesting journey in this NFT space. So there was an artist named Beeple that sold his artwork for $69 million as an NFT.
Wow.
In 2021.
Okay.
He kind of like got the snowball effect for every artist, every creative to getting into the space, because they're like, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, right? And because I used to work as a creative, I decided to put some of my artworks out there. I ended up selling them like in a couple of weeks and stuff, and it was probably like the most craziest thing in the world. When you get up in the middle of the night and you see someone around the world. So I have this piece where it's like the Garden of Eden, but the tree is in space, and there's an astronaut in a boat swimming to this tree in the middle of in space. Right. So it's very existential, it's cosmic, it's very, I love space and stuff. So it's very like that. So it's a very imaginative piece, and I had someone who paid a significant amount of money to buy that.
So you're the creator of that piece?
Yeah, I'm a creator of that piece. So, and the auction runs for 24 hours. So he put the most, so I put a price on it, and he meets that price, and that's when the auction starts. So that's the lowest I'm willing to sell it and stuff. And that auction happened for 24 hours, and that's probably one of the most important days of my life, because not only did it completely change how my future would be today or where I would be today, but it was such a bizarre feeling to know that there's someone around the world who's willing to pay so much money for my imagination. I'm having fun. I created this for fun, right? And there's someone out there who values this and is willing to pay me for an art. And so I made a couple of artworks. I sold them. I took all that money because it was still digital money to me, and because I was still working as a photographer back then. And I took all that money and I started investing into NFTs. And I got really lucky with a lot of projects. I was at the right place at the right time as well. There have been those opportunities which come in cycles, which is why I still say it's not like you missed the boat or something. But I got lucky with I was talking about the Bored Ape project. I got lucky with that. I got it at a very, very low price. There were a lot of other projects that I bought that ended up going 20x, 30x in a matter of weeks. Of course, there was a there was a euphoria. There was like, we were in a bull market. Bull markets are where everything is going well. Crypto was flying, NFTs were flying. Anything that would release, any NFT project that would release would go like 20x, 30x. There was a lot of hype in that space. Probably something that's not sustainable, something I don't think will come again. So it was a very different time that happened in. But I talk about this a lot often because I've been very lucky enough to make quite a lot of money that I could have ever imagined to make in such a short amount of time. And it was just about being in the right place at the right time and educating myself. And there have been like cycles where, like, and there are still like a lot of projects. There's a project, for example, right now that minted, so you could buy it for free. You would essentially pay $3 or $4, which is your transaction cost. When you buy something on the blockchain, you pay a gas fees. Right. The gas fees is your transaction cost. So you could basically, there was an NFT right now which is worth $6,000 and it was minted for free. So you would only pay $2 or $3 gas. You would pay $2 or $3 for gas, and that's it. Of course, there are like hundreds of projects that release like that. A lot of them go to zero. A lot of them are always are scams as well. Wherever there's money, there are people trying to game the system. But you still have these opportunities that come in that are open for everyone. So I've kind of got like really lucky because I've usually people come in this space as one vertical. They come as an artist and they focus on becoming an artist. They come as a collector of art. They come and they continue on that. I kind of have all three verticals under what I do in this space. So I came as an artist. I took all that money. I started investing. I started collecting art. So I collect a lot of art as well. I have about 100 pieces from artists that I've collected and stuff. And now I'm building a project. I'm building a company in this space. So I feel like I've crossed all the three verticals. And my goal has been to bring this education, this knowledge a lot to people, not from a way of how you can start into NFTs or what's blockchain or how do you open like a blockchain wallet, because that information is out there. But I want to personally focus on educating people of why this is important, which I'm hoping works as a catalyst to them getting interested in it. Because one of the most passionate things about NFTs to me particularly, and I talk about this quite often, is okay, obviously this is with the caveat that obviously people who are into crypto are on the privileged pyramid, level of pyramid. But you still, like, if you look at history, all the tech companies came from the West, like, your Apple, whatever, like, like Google, Facebook, whatever and stuff. And that's because all these companies that came into in the 90s, in the late 80s and stuff, a lot of these came from the West because the East was struggling with a lot of other problems that were dating back to colonization and invasions and a lot of other issues and stuff. Like, we don't have to get
from the war.
Recovering from the war, and like there were like so many issues that we were still going through, right? So we couldn't even like look into those areas. The privileged class ended up leaving these countries, ended up going to the West and making a name for themselves. This is, to me, I think after a very long time in human history, I think we have a point where we can all kind of start at the same point. Of course, being in a particular socioeconomic class, which is still a bit of a problematic nature, but it doesn't matter what country you're from, what gender you are, what religion are you from, that you have the ability to kind of build anything based on your merit and knowledge and information. And I think that's the most passionate, that's the most interesting thing to me, that you are seeing so many protocols and ideas coming out from even like Dubai or from the East that we haven't seen in the tech world and stuff. And I wonder, this would be one of those times in human history that we will actually see a lot of tech and innovation come out of the entire world and not just like North America, which I think is better for the entire world. Like, when we are talking about evolution, as if we zoom out and look planet Earth and we are talking evolution as a civilization and stuff, maybe we would be better off more. Like, I'm a big person who believes in, like, I'm a person who believes a lot in diversity. So having more women in it, having more children in it, having more marginalized communities in it and stuff. Maybe we would be 20x into the future right now and stuff. Maybe that's why we've been held back. Maybe this is why we don't have a solution to cancer. We haven't seen things from a different point of view and stuff, right? So I think that's like one of the most exciting things to me, which is why every opportunity I get to like speak to people who are getting into this space or who are building something in this space, that I like to go to these events. I was at NFT London in last year, and I am going to. There is NFT Paris happening this year. There's NFT New York City happening this year. There's a bunch of events that are happening, and I'm looking to be a part of all those events. I can get the message more out. I feel like because I've been in this space for, even though relatively it's still a small amount of time, it's been like 2 years, but like the space has kind of properly existed, at least in the NFT space, for only 2 years. NFTs did exist a bit before, but not properly. So obviously, if you're looking at my credibility or what I'm doing just as a reference of time and stuff, I don't think that's the right metric because the industry is new. But I feel like I've been part of a lot of projects. I've invested in over like 500 projects in during the course of my 2 years and stuff. I've invested in cartoon type projects. I've invested in art. I've invested in gaming projects. So I feel like I can give my opinion and my advice on at least data driven things and stuff. That okay, this happened. You can probably do a case study with this project and see how you can pivot and stuff. And I feel like that's where I try to tell people that maybe what I'm saying could be of value to you, not because I'm saying I know it all. In fact, we say in Web3 and NFTs, and especially in NFTs, because the space is so new, if anyone tells you what to do, that means very likely they're very new and stuff. Because anyone who's really into it will never tell you what to do, because the space changes so fast that you especially you who's never been into NFTs or crypto for that matter, you come up with a revolutionary idea that no one's done in this space that you could end up doing way better than I did, which is because it's a new space, right? Like we are all hungry for innovation, and there's so much opportunity. So yeah.
You know what, Rahim? I reached out to a couple of people who deal with crypto, and you're the only one who was open to explaining what it is rather than selling it to me. So thank you so much for that. It really got me more educated and aware of what the system is, not just crypto, but Web3 in general. And I'm sure everybody who's watching this will benefit from this. And 2023 is going to be a year where people would know more about Web3, and we wish you all success for whatever projects you do. Thank you so much for your time. And if anyone wants to follow you, we are going to put your social links in the description below. But do you have any advice or anything that you want to say to everyone out there?
Just get educated on Web3. You don't have to be an investor. Don't think that if you don't have money, you can be a part of it. Just educate yourself. It's going to be a part of every tech industry, from marketing materials to how logistics works or back-end stuff is going to be a part of a lot of ecosystems. If you wanna be ahead of everyone else, if you want to succeed in whatever that you're doing, just get educated on Web3, and I can bet you'll have an upper hand in whatever you do in the future.